Hello and good morning. I am going to tell you some of my story. Probably forget some parts, but and it's definitely not over yet. But yeah, so I think a little background is always good with stories, and most people's stories really begin before they are actually born. So my parents, I love them, love my grandparents, but like everyone, they have their issues or had. So my dad, in particular, was raised in a family where he was forced to go to church, but grandpa would come go out Saturday night and get drunk and be sleeping over off a hangover the next morning, and my dad would be forced to get on the church bus and go off to church. So developed a resentment for it. Mom's a little bit better, but still felt forced to go off to church, and so neither one of them really grew to love it. In fact, more so resented the idea of having to go to church or the whole idea of organized religion. And that was what we were raised in, was an idea that religion, Christianity ought to be a private affair, that nothing should be forced on anybody. To an extent, that's pretty accurate, but there's more to it than just you or me. And that's part of what I'm doing here, is to understand that my story is important for me, but the reason I went through all of it is to help somebody else out. And so I'm hoping that whoever I'm supposed to help out is going to see this. I don't know, but that's my hope and prayer. Well, first 5 years of my life, I just don't have much memory, but I know never went to church. Um, and so there was no concept there of what it would be like, you know, to be a Christian or anything along those lines. In fact, one of my earliest memories is going to lunch at my best friend's house when I was about 5, and ready to start eating when lunch was served. But I was told, "Oh, wait up, wait up! We're going to have to pray first." And I said, "Pray? What's that?" And that was my first um, exposure, my first meeting and with Christianity, with any kind of organized religion, really, for that matter. And so the idea of thanking God for my food made a lot of sense, and it just clicked. And so my best friend and his family would begin taking me to church, and whenever I would spend the night at his house on a Saturday night, Sunday morning we'd go to church, and it just made sense. It all clicked. My mom and dad weren't against it. They just, and but they weren't going to go change what they were doing for it. So as long as it, didn't interrupt them, they were fine. And so um, I remember sixth birthday or Christmas, somewhere around that time, got a gift of a picture Bible and uh, like a bookmark from like a Bible bookstore kind of thing, explaining the meaning of my name and some verses I went along with it. And so I just started from the beginning reading the picture Bible, which is kind of like a Bible in graphic novel form, if you will. So I was reading that. My mom actually would read to me the New Testament. Um, and, so kind of get the picture. Mom's theology was that, you needed to believe in Jesus and follow the Ten Commandments. That was her theology. Um, Probably still is. But, and so was kind of learning everything on my own, and I didn't have a lot of guidance with it uh, outside of you know Sunday mornings when if I had spent the night, like I said, did some Royal Rangers and memorized John 3:16 in the old King James. So I still have that, deep down in my heart. And I was, committed to it, and I was trying to follow, like Mom said, and follow the Ten Commandments, and I was always terrified of breaking one of them. And so I just, I was a good kid and tried to follow along. Eventually, kind of matured past comic book Bible and was looking through the some old storage and found box with some Bibles in them, and one of them had a gold cover, and it kind of stood out to me, and it's called the Good News Bible. And so I asked Mom if I could, read it and use it, and she said, of course. And so I remember about being 7, 8 years old, just reading the Bible on my own and praying on my own. And because of this, I had developed my own personal relationship with God, which is important. Uh, I mean, that's super important. I think most people, at least here that I've come across, that is the part where they struggle with, is developing their own personal relationship with God as opposed to just what was handed down to them. I, on the other hand, didn't develop a corporate relationship with God and His people. That was what was lacking for me. And throughout my life, growing up, next 10 years or so, going through elementary, middle, and high school, go to church with some other friends. And I remember one time there was a altar call at one particular church, and and I was praying for other people to feel God's call on them to go forward. And afterwards, my other friend who had invited me said, "Why didn't you go up?" I said, "Well, I'm already a Christian." And and I remember also, walking home around the same time and getting there's the Gideon's folks were out and about, and they're passing out their little Bibles, and in the back had like a thing about like a statement of faith, and that's where I learned that, along the lines of Romans 10:9, that you gotta, make a verbal statement and a commitment, and I'd been, so I got scared that I hadn't. And so, I mean, whether or not it was a healthy fear of the Lord or not, there was definitely a fear of the Lord there. And so, um, for, officially, I guess, wrote it down and signed it. And there's probably a date in there sometime, mid-90s. But like I said, I had been, since 5, I'd had a actual personal relationship with the God of the universe and His Son Jesus. And so, but it was something that, like, my parents had gotten into me that was private, and so I kept it private and didn't talk about it and didn't, engage with other people in it. And because of this, it also didn't really grow. And that's one of the things about the corporate stuff, is that it's really important for helping people to grow. Fast forward to graduation day. Um, I am there. It's graduation afterwards, and everybody's saying, tearful goodbyes, making vain promises about, keeping in touch and things like that. And there is me, um, a Mormon friend of mine, and my girlfriend at the time, and the three of us were talking. And Mormon friend says he's a Mormon. My ex-girlfriend says that she's a born again Christian. And I said something that I don't think I'll ever forget, because of the terrible taste it left in my mouth. And right when I said it, it was just like something hit me, that it was insufficient, that it was bad, terrible, regretful. And so I said, "Oh, I'm pretty much a Christian." And as soon as it came out, like, the words were bitter. So I knew that wasn't good enough. Like, right when I said it, I knew it wasn't good enough. And that summer, like right after that, like, I just committed to being able to give a better answer than that, to being able to, like, honor Jesus with my words. You know, perhaps it was conviction of really what it means to really take the Lord's name in vain, that it had been using it in a pretty meaningless way. So that summer, I just decided I was going to gobble up as much as I could, and really um, began to get on fire, um, and studied as much as I could on my own, while still not going to church on Sundays, because that was so instilled into me, that religion is private, that Christianity is private. And again, my personal relationship grew stronger. Even like to thank the works of the Left Behind series, and Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins, and not fantastically well written books, but enough to really encourage me to dive deeper. And went off to college, and we it was orientation day for freshmen, and so all the engineering students would go into Independence Hall on Neal Avenue there at Ohio State. And it's one of those ones where you and 500 of your closest friends are going into an auditorium, but outside there was people handing out little slips, and they're just little slips and golf pencils. And I go inside and I look at it, and I realize that this is for like a Christian organization. I look into for help people and get people connected with Christianity and Campus Crusade for Christ. And so I filled it out, and like first thing after getting out, I went to find somebody, handed it off right away. And so got into a Campus Crusade, now it's called Cru, I believe, Bible study. Met two friends who become lifelong friends. I still keep in touch with, Matt and Pete, and in that year, the next year, again, growing more, actually got more, grew out more corporately, would go to midweek, go to Bible studies, go to midweek, worship sessions with Campus Crusade. And Still wasn't going to church on Sundays. And then at the very end of that school year, I'd been getting up early on Sundays and studying on my own, spending time on my own, but decided to, follow up on some people's invites and went with them to some different services. And, I had this idea that a pastor, a priest, or minister, or somebody was basically there in the role. My false impression was that this person was supposed to be some sort of mediator between me and God, and which is why I knew I never needed one. Because if you have the Lord Jesus in your heart, you don't need to have anybody else in between. He is the high priest. He is the mediator. But then I realized that it wasn't for that it was for gaining different perspective from a fellow brother or sister in Christ, being in a setting where people were building each other up, being in a part of the Christian family, and realizing that there was more to it than just me. That it wasn't about me. That I had been depriving myself of the contribution of my brothers and sisters in Christ, that I had been depriving them of my contribution. And that summer, that ex-girlfriend I would go with her family to church on Sundays. And then when I got back to school, I started doing the same. And again, growth spurts. I would have growth spurts in my Christian journey, and this was a big one. And as I kept growing, became more involved, became by senior year became a Bible study leader. Actually, junior year I tried to on a couple occasions to lead my own. That's right. But senior year was leading Bible studies, which were youth group, life groups, it was officially called, but Bible studies, and actually discipling other people, which is where I met my wife. That's a whole different story for a different time. But yeah, and then when that ex-girlfriend dumped me, my faith had grown strong enough. It wasn't just for her. It hadn't ever been for her in the first place, but in case anybody would ever wonder, the faith, the community, because that night after being dumped on the phone calls was Bible study, and I was there, and the community that had built up was there for me, and it was a strength. And so it was good, and more than just for me, but also for me. So I have had a journey, and it keeps going. After graduation, came back, kept on going to church, understanding the importance of that. Needed to get to a point where I had another growth spurt, and after getting engaged and married, and my wife and I knew that we needed to be more involved, and found another growth spurt. So Christian life is about growing, is about contributing. It's about more than just the Christian, but also is about the Christian. It's about Christian family, the family's impact on the Christian's impact on the family. And so I keep growing. I keep trying to do more. I keep trying to be a better disciple. I keep trying to disciple more. And there's setbacks and jumps forward. And so, but it has been a wonderful ride, and I don't know where else it's going. But hopefully, this is something that somebody needed to hear, because I felt like I needed to start doing this, even though the video is not great, but this is a start. So, more to come.